Horse racing's biggest winners are also its biggest cheaters. What you're about to discover will make you question every bet you've ever placed. In 1975, a former Jesuit seminarian named Barney Curley was about to pull off the most audacious betting coup in racing history. His weapon wasn't drugs or fake horses, it was a phone booth and perfect timing. Curley owned Yellow Sam, a mediocre horse that looked hopeless in every public appearance. But appearances were exactly what Curley wanted. While Yellow Sam lost race after race, Curley was secretly training him at night, turning him into a completely different animal. The plan was military precision. Curley chose Bellowstown, a remote Irish track with only one public phone line connecting it to bookmakers across the country. On race day, he stationed an accomplice in that phone booth with strict orders: keep talking and never hang up. While the phone line stayed blocked, Curley's network of friends placed thousands of small bets across Ireland and England. Each bet looked innocent, but together they represented a fortune riding on Yellow Sam at 20-1 odds. When Yellow Sam stormed to victory by 2.5 lengths, Curley had won over £300,000, worth millions today. The betting industry was furious but helpless. Everything Curley did was technically legal. The coup was so legendary it changed how betting communications worked forever. But Curley had proven something dangerous. With enough planning, anyone could fool the entire racing establishment. 1 year earlier, something even more sophisticated unfolded. This wasn't about blocking communications. This was about fooling an entire country. Gay Future was a little-known Irish horse practically invisible to English bookmakers. Perfect cover for what investigators later called the most sophisticated betting fraud ever attempted. They entered Gay Future in a small race at Cartmel, plus 2 other horses they owned in different races the same day. The syndicate coordinated hundreds of small combination bets linking all 3 horses. If Gay Future won and the other 2 lost, the payout would be enormous. On race day, the other 2 horses never even showed up to their races. They were still back in Ireland. Meanwhile, Gay Future arrived looking terrible, thin, unfit, and ridden by an unknown jockey. Then the race started, and Gay Future transformed. He won by lengths, leaving spectators stunned and bookmakers facing a £300,000 payout. By the time officials realized what happened, the money was already being collected. 10 years later, Australian racing witnessed something that made previous scams look subtle. This was about swapping horses using women's hair dye. Fine Cotton was a slow horse with 33-1 odds at Eagle Farm Racecourse, but the gang had Bold Personality, a much faster horse that looked almost identical to Fine Cotton. Their plan? Use Clairol hair dye to change Bold Personality's markings and race him as Fine Cotton. But they made one fatal mistake. They ran out of hair dye halfway through and started using brown paint to finish the job. When huge bets started pouring in on Fine Cotton, officials got suspicious. The horse won easily, but the sloppy paint job was obvious to anyone looking closely. The markings looked fresh and artificial. Officials disqualified the horse before anyone collected winnings. The gang's potential fortune collapsed because they couldn't afford enough hair dye to finish properly. But even elaborate horse swaps pale compared to a scam that fooled an entire nation using fake telegrams and fictional horses. This wasn't about disguising real animals. This was about creating races that never happened. In 1898, con artists created the Trodmore Hunt Meeting, complete with race cards, jockey names, and results. The problem, Trodmore Hunt didn't exist. No racecourse, no horses, no actual races. They sent fake telegrams to bookmakers across England, reporting results from this fictional meeting. While bookmakers waited for confirmation, the gang placed bets on horses they knew would win because they were making up the results. The scheme worked because communication was slow in 1898. They bet on Reaper, then sent telegrams saying Reaper had won. They backed Fairy Bell, then announced her victory. When racing officials tried to verify the results, they discovered the shocking truth. The entire race meeting had been invented by criminals with a telegraph machine. Multiple arrests followed, but the gang had proven that entire race meetings could be created out of thin air. But creating fake races was child's play compared to what happened when one of Britain's top jockeys became the center of racing's biggest corruption investigation. This wasn't about fooling bookmakers. This was about accusations that a champion rider was betting against his own horses. In 2004, Kieren Fallon was one of the world's best jockeys. He'd won multiple championships and ridden for the biggest owners, but investigators suspected Fallon had been using Betfair's new lay betting system to profit from defeats. The scandal centered around Bollinger Ridge and other horses Fallon rode that lost suspiciously. While punters backed these horses to win, Fallon's associates were allegedly laying huge bets against them on Betfair, essentially betting that Fallon's own mounts would lose. Betfair's lay betting system was perfect for this kind of potential corruption. Instead of needing a bookmaker to take their bets, corrupt jockeys could theoretically bet directly against their own horses through the exchange. If they rode to lose, they could collect money from honest punters. The investigation was massive. Phone records were scrutinized for evidence of coordination. Betting patterns were analyzed for suspicious activity. Prosecutors believed they had uncovered systematic race fixing worth millions. When charges were filed in 2006, it shocked British racing. Fallon and 9 others faced conspiracy charges in what became one of the sport's biggest trials. The case dominated headlines for months. But in 2007, the prosecution collapsed. Fallon was acquitted. The jury found insufficient evidence that he had deliberately stopped horses. The case fell apart because proving a jockey's intent is nearly impossible. Even though Fallon was cleared, the scandal proved how dangerous lay betting technology could be. It showed that even unfounded suspicions could destroy careers and public confidence in racing's integrity. But even legal acquittals couldn't compare to what happened when criminals decided to hack their way to millions at America's biggest racing event. This wasn't about stopping horses or coordinating bets. This was about breaking into computer systems to steal the biggest jackpot in racing history. The Breeders' Cup Pick 6 was worth over $3 million. Chris Harn worked for Autotote, the company running betting computers for tracks across America. He discovered he could manipulate Pick 6 pools after betting closed, but before results were official. Harn's scheme was foolproof: create multiple winning tickets covering different outcomes. No matter who won, one of his rigged tickets would hit the jackpot. On Breeders' Cup Day, when 43-1 long shot Volponi shocked the world, Harn's rigged tickets were suddenly worth over $3 million. But he made one fatal mistake. The betting structure was impossible. No legitimate bettor would create tickets with identical patterns. The FBI uncovered the computer manipulation before any money was paid out. Harn went to prison, and his associates never collected a penny. But computer fraud was nothing compared to one man who decided to corrupt an entire region of American racing. Tony Ciulla built a corruption network reaching dozens of tracks across the Northeast. Ciulla's system was brilliant. He approached struggling jockeys and offered cash to stop their horses in specific races. A few $100s to a jockey could generate thousands in betting profits. The corruption spread like cancer. Jockeys who initially refused watched others get rich from losing on purpose. Ciulla expanded beyond jockeys, corrupting trainers and track officials who looked the other way. The FBI finally caught Ciulla through wiretaps. Brian Wright earned the nickname the Milkman because he always delivered, but he wasn't delivering milk. Wright ran one of Britain's largest cocaine operations while simultaneously fixing horse races across the country. His drug empire generated millions in cash that needed cleaning. Racing provided perfect money laundering. Bet huge amounts on fixed races, turning dirty drug money into clean gambling winnings. Wright operated like a racing godfather. Jockeys who refused bribes found themselves shut out. Trainers who wouldn't cooperate discovered their horses struggling to win races they should have dominated. For over a decade, Wright manipulated hundreds of races while laundering millions. The empire collapsed in the late 1990s when international agencies traced Wright's cocaine network. Wright received a 30-year sentence for drug trafficking, but the full extent of his influence over British racing may never be known. These scams prove something terrifying about horse racing. With enough planning, creativity, or corruption, the entire system can be manipulated. Every major betting coup in history started with someone who thought they were smarter than the system. Most of the time, they were right.